sacred text is Luke 9:28 through 36. About 8 days after saying this, Jesus took Peter, John, and James and went up onto a mountain to pray. While Jesus was praying, his face changed in appearance, and the clothes he wore became dazzlingly white. Suddenly 2 people were there talking with Jesus, Moses and Elijah. They appeared in glory and spoke of the prophecy that Jesus was about to fulfill in Jerusalem. Peter and the others had already fallen into a deep sleep, but awakening, they saw Jesus' glory and the 2 people who were standing next to him. And when the 2 were leaving, Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, how good it is for us to be here. Let us set up 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Peter didn't really know what he was saying. While Peter was speaking, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and the disciples grew fearful as the others entered it. Then from the cloud came a voice which said, "This is my own, my chosen one. Listen to him." When the voice finished speaking, they saw no one but Jesus standing there, and the disciples kept quiet, telling nothing of what they had seen at that time to anyone. Holy wisdom, holy word.
Thanks be to God.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Every time they try to destroy us, we learn how to live forever. To me, this sounds like queer liberation. It sounds like we've always been here and we always will be here. Queerness to me feels liminal. It feels like a way to exist outside of expectations. And sometimes we invite people into that experience and we call that coming out. And I don't really like that phrase, coming out, but I think more than the phrase, I don't like the pressure that comes with the phrase. Like, we owe these sacred stories to just everybody, even people who might not be able to tend to them and honor them and see them. I think that's the part I don't like. And 2 things can be true at the same time. I do think there is value when we can share these stories and we can find people who can celebrate us and meet us on the mountaintops and the fullness of who we are, and those who can see and enter into the depths of the valleys of our suffering. I think that's important. And I think there's a level of vulnerability there that is also important. And I've experienced this a few times in my life where I just needed people to experience the truth that I was experiencing. The first time I came out was 2009. It was my last summer working as a camp counselor. It was the summer I cut my hair. It was the summer I started dressing in a way that felt comfortable for my body. It was the summer that I finally took that deep breath of relief that comes when you can finally just be who you are. I'm seeing some nods. This seems to be resonating. And I found 2 of my friends, the only other 2 queer people on staff that I knew of, Caleb and Kristen, and I told them, "Hey, I'm queer." And because I knew they would be safe, right? I knew my story would be safe in their hands, and I was right. They gave me a really big hug and immediately started educating me on queer culture. And it was a lot, and I still feel like I need some education in queer culture, even now. This was a literal mountaintop experience for me. I was in the mountains of North Carolina at the time, so this resonated with me today. And in the coming years, I would also experience that this part of my story was not safe for everyone to know about. I experienced how some people were challenged by my experience of myself. In 2012, I was told that I could not serve on church council because people like me could not serve in church leadership, but here we are. So you can tell that to God, I guess. I was told I couldn't work with youth despite 4 summers as a camp counselor. And this was in the South Carolina, so for context, people are kind of southern nice. So while this part wasn't explicitly stated, it was made abundantly clear that it was not okay for me to hold my partner's hand in church. But it was okay and even sweet for other couples to hold hands and show little signs of affection. It was made clear that I was being boxed out of belonging in this beloved community. And this was a moment of a deep valley for me. My reality felt a little bit closer to death, and I almost broke up with God. I said, I want nothing to do with this wounded system. And yet in that valley peak, the depths of that, there was a moment of liberation and grace and an invitation into a new way of life nestled within this old wounded system that was outside my expectation. Someone in this community recognized the harm that was done, entered into my story a little bit, and invited me over for Easter dinner. And I don't think it was a coincidence that it was Easter dinner that I was invited into, because I felt really close to death, and I was invited into a recognition of new life and resurrection. Even when they try to destroy us, we learn how to live forever. Almost a decade later, 2021, I came out again as non-binary. I claimed gender-neutral pronouns, they, them, theirs, as I didn't introduce myself this morning, so I apologize for that. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And this experience had both mountaintops and valleys happening at the same time. There were a lot of people who met me at that mountaintop and celebrated with me, and there were a lot of people who launched me into a valley, a broken relationship that has not been repaired to this day. And there's some people who have been there since the beginning, in 2009, who released what they thought was comfortable in their own understandings of what was safe and okay to remain in relationship with me. Instead of boxing me out of community, out of belonging, they created belonging in a new way. They revealed new life when my reality felt closer to death. Every time they try to destroy us, we learn how to live forever. I'm still not a fan of the phrase coming out, and 2 things can be true at once. I think there are several coming out stories held within our scriptures, and I think this transfiguration is one of them. Jesus is coming out onto this mountaintop and revealing a deeper part of his identity. He's somehow human and divine at the same time. If that's not queer, I don't know what is. And while he's having this divine coming out moment, he's surrounded by his ancestors that came before him and his closest, most beloved friends. Even though Peter's kind of confused, he doesn't really know what's going on. Should I make some tents? Should I make a cake? I don't know. There's something important happening here, and I need to pay attention. I'm being invited to witness this moment of renewed identity, and this matters, so I should see it and honor it. And these three, Peter, James, and John, had been with Jesus for a little while now. They left their nets bursting with fish. They left their economic security. They left what was comfortable and what they knew for the sake of following Jesus into a new way of life, into a new identity, a queer way of life that existed beyond the expectations of empire, that in fact betrayed empire for the sake of liberation and good news. And this good news that Jesus has been proclaiming throughout Luke is for the poor, the hungry, the wounded, the weeping, the oppressed in body and spirit. Good news for those who the institutions and the abusive powers have been shoving away from belonging. Good news for those who wept so hard they couldn't breathe, for they would laugh so hard they couldn't breathe. Good news that reveals new life for those whose reality felt close to death. Every time they try to destroy us, we learn how to live forever. I also think this mountaintop experience revealed to Jesus those people who he could celebrate at the mountaintop with and who would enter into the valley and the reality of his suffering. These three were also there, according to some of the Gospels, while he was weeping so hard he couldn't breathe before he was arrested and executed. Find the people who can meet you in both places. And they were also there at the ultimate transformation and reality that this radical love couldn't even be defeated by state-sanctioned execution. Even when they try to destroy love, it learns how to live forever. I'm warming up to the phrase coming out. I think I read something last week that kind of reframed this for me, that sometimes it's used in a way like we're going to come out to these people who cannot hold our story, like your coworkers or social media. God bless you if you come out on social media. I have been there. Bless you. But maybe that's not what that phrase means. Maybe the phrase means to come out into queer community. Come out to the people who can see you at that mountaintop in the fullness of your life. Come out to those who know the depths of those valleys and how it feels to cry so hard you can't breathe. For they also know how to create community and belonging and joy in a completely different and queer way. So for those of us who know the reason for the closet and the discernment and the wisdom and all of the feelings and anxiety that comes with deciding when and how and even if we should come out. For those of us who know how it feels to continue still to have our bodies and our identities and our sense of belonging legislated against or attacked by these abusive forces of empire. For those of us who know that we have always been here and will always be here, even when we feel close to death, where can we taste moments of transformation and new life and resurrection? Even when we feel close to death, our spirits and our identities and our belonging and our liberation is found nestled within beloved community, within those who can see us and celebrate us and hold us and protect us from these abusive forces of empire. Liberation somehow exists within and among, nestled into this old, wounded system. Liberation is experienced in the transfigured, transitioning life-creating, queer-spirited, somehow both human and divine, wounded, dead, and resurrected body of Jesus. Every time they try to destroy us, we learn how to live forever. Every time they try to destroy love, it proves that it will live forever. Amen.